It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. I'm glad y'all here. You know, there's this song I like by Bobby Blue Bland, and the title is If You're Gonna Walk on My Love, Baby. And he tells a story about his girlfriend's significant other, Love, and he sees her out with another man wearing the dress that he bought her. And when he confronts her with the story, she says, well, if you didn't touch me, then it couldn't have been me. And the chorus says, if you're going to walk on my love, baby, the least you could do is take off your shoes. And I think that song summarizes how I felt about things this week. So NASCAR, one of my business partners has asked me to reach out to them to see if they need my help. Now, to date, as a point of my personal constitution, I don't do that, especially as we're talking about issues of diversity and inclusion or race and equity. If you ain't willing, I ain't trying to make you willing. The work is hard enough with people who are willing. So let's talk about NASCAR and Bubba for a moment. Here are the numbers I got from the FBI report. And so let me just read them to you to make sure that I'm right. Out of 1,684 garage stalls, at 29 tracks, 11 had pull down ropes tied into a knot. You know, like any kind of knot that I would just pull down to be able to open something. Okay. And only one at Talladega was tied into a noose. And that one happened to be in Bubba's garage. So they're going to come out and say, you know, that noose, it's been there for a while. And we don't believe it was racially motivated and directed towards Bubba. And Bubba, because he's a tiller, if you have not read Cultivating Culture as a Garden, you may not understand what I mean when I say tiller. A tiller is a person who's willing to go into a garden and recognizes that the soil is not ready, and they are willing to do the hard work to break up the ground to make space for someone else. In sports, there are tillers everywhere. You know, I would venture to say that Jesse Owens, that Jackie Robbins, both are people who made space for other people to come and plant later. Althea Gibson, she had to be a tiller. Those people who are willing to kind of take it, they recognize that the climate is not ready for them. And so they acquiesce, but with the goal of not necessarily assimilating, with the goal of making things different today. And I would argue that we need people like that. We need people who are willing to go in and be tillers. I am not a Bubba. I'm not an Althea Gibson. I am not a Jackie Robinson. I can't. I don't have the temperament for such things. And so what I think is fascinating is that Bubba has come out and thanked the FBI. And listen, if you're going to walk on my love, baby, the least you could do is take off your shoes, man. Come on. 10% of the garages would be 168. 1% of the garages would be 16.8 or 17. You got all of these freaking garage stalls, and there's one where there's a noose in there. You don't think there's a problem with the fact that there was a noose in there, because it was just last year. It's not like you said, oh, there's a noose in there and it's been there since 1920. Let me not call people names. You people have the nerve to come and tell us that it was just there in 2019. That story this week summarizes almost everything that we are dealing with. We have such short memories. And in this age of the cable news cycle where we're just like, you know what, just move on to the next thing, move on to the next thing, move on to the next thing. What I'm starting to see is that every bit of racial progress is always followed by regression. It typically takes years. We are in a situation where it's taking seconds, taking days. I'm seeing folks already posting, you know, we're just one race, the human race. Why don't we just love people? Listen, don't fall for it. It is an overemphasis on let's get things back to a peaceful state whereby we do not point out issues at all. Here in my town, a couple of three preachers, pastors of churches had a meeting with the mayor and the chief of police. Now, here in my town, north of the river, you can pretty much say everybody white. South of the river, you can say it's pretty diverse. Kansas City, when you look at the whole city, is almost 30% Black people. But those people are by and large congregated south of the river. When the conversation came up that police need to live in the communities for which they protect and serve, and the chief of police had the nerve to say, our officers live in Kansas City. Now, granted, they live north of the river. That's the dress I brought you, dude. Who the hell you think you talking to? We all live here in this town. We all live here in this town. So there's nothing to tout about saying that your police officers live in Kansas City, but they live north of the river. We are one of the most segregated cities in the nation. Did you just use that as your... Well, you didn't touch me, so couldn't have been me. And the entire interview was that way. He gave excuses for why he didn't know these clergy members when, y'all, I don't know if y'all remember, just 2-3 weeks ago, he was out in Johnson County, in a county that ain't even in, not only is it not in Missouri, it is... We ain't gonna talk about how many Black people in Johnson County. Kansas City police chief. I'm trying to explain to people, hey, listen, police are held to a super high standard of care. That means that you are going to be responsible with your weaponry. You understand that your job is protecting and serving. This idea of law and order is about a very small percentage of the population. You need to be held to a higher standard. And every time I say that, somebody will come to me and say, well, what about Black on Black crime? And the most frustrating part of it for me is in that conversation, people act like they know me. I don't have to tell you what my street cred is. I don't have to tell anyone how many people I know who have been shot or who have been killed violently. Because I understand that number is still a fraction of the Black people impacted. And 100% of Black people have been over-policed. And everyday citizens who kill Black people, if we do our part and use the line to tell people, to tell on people who are committing violent crimes, those people will go to jail. To hold these things up as apples to apples comparison is irresponsible. And number two, it's not understanding that a focus on reducing violent crime and a focus on reducing police brutality and police overreach are both focused on reducing the impacts of institutionalized racial oppression. The goal is reducing the impact of institutionalized racial oppression. The goal ain't for you to feel better because your personal experience is being addressed. If you will not look at the theme, if you will not look at the whole, you will miss racism altogether. Because on the individual level, you will be thinking you are crazy. You will be thinking you did not see a woman with the dress on you bought her, when she tells you, wasn't me. So NASCAR can say what they want to say. The chief of police here in Kansas City can say what they want to say. Those of you who have been victimized by violent crime and you think that's a bigger issue than police brutality, say what you want to say. But from the moment I could understand what different treatment was, I have been treated differently by police. And I didn't understand until I started hanging out with my rich white friends. People who drunk and in cars and get pulled over by police, and police officers not only don't arrest them, not only don't shoot them, but take them home. Don't you tell me about the mistake someone made, and so that is why they deserve to be shot. Someone on a friend's timeline asked me, well, why don't you want to be a police officer? And I said, I do not want as part of my job description to be able to shoot people. And then he wants to respond and says, my job description as a police officer is not to shoot people. The hell it ain't. All you trained for is shooting people. Now, there's a whole bunch of things you can call me, but don't you wear the damn dress I bought you and then tell me it ain't you. Call me a bunch of things. Don't call me dumb. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. We got work to do.